Hi, I'm Ryan Sutherland. I was one of the designers on the latest batch of Card Wars, and I was the creator of the DarkLands expansion, which is our new cooperative PvE expansion.
Where did the idea for DarkLands come from? Why go to a co-op PvE mode?
Well, I have a huge love for cooperative PvE modes in games. I love Card Wars, but oftentimes when I'm playing it with somebody, I want to work together with them. With Card Wars being such a head-to-head game, it meant that I can't really enjoy that style of mode. And I think one of the biggest things about Adventure Time is the friendship between different characters. And as much as Card Wars is great at fighting one another, Finn and Jake are friends most of the time, and I just want to have my Flame Princess and Fern team up together.
So how did you approach designing for PvE and a PvP engine?
Well, yeah, that was the real core to how do we do a PvE in a game that is so focused on this is my side of the board and this is your side of the board. Obviously, when we had other expansions that introduced cooperative play, you were playing against another team of players. So that changed how you were setting up your landscape, so I could play against this player and that player over there. And so we kind of thought about it for a while, and I said, well, what if we take the two landscapes and we just separate them apart and add a new landscape in between and really allow us to use the same setup that we normally have, but now we have these villains coming down the center, and together we can start to fight against those. So that was really the breakthrough moment that allowed us to build a PvE within this setting.
At what point did you develop the threat increase system?
Yeah, that came a little bit later in the process. One of the challenges is that in Card Wars, you don't get more and more resources over time. Instead, you get to use those same two actions every turn. As you are accumulating more units on the board, generally you're becoming more and more powerful, and you're starting to cement your place in the game. To combat that, we needed some way for the Darklands creatures to become more powerful as the game started going closer and closer to the end game. It also allowed us to create a different levels of difficulty. If you want to play on an easy mode, we can adjust where those threat levels kick in. That allowed us to make the game in a way that you can play with some of the simplest decks, or if you want a real challenge, you're going to have to build the best deck that you can in order to overcome.
How did you design and balance the curse and barrier cards?
Yeah, so the curse cards were something that we decided that we wanted like a little bit more variety in what was going on. Obviously, we have our creatures, and they're great at adding a little bit of spice, but the curses really throw a wrench into your plans. And you never know what's going to come out of here, which is great, because sometimes it's not that scary, but sometimes it can completely overwhelm you all in one go. And it's really exciting to see how some of the different creatures and the different curses pair up. For the barriers, we really wanted to allow the players to have a little bit of safety if something bad happens to them. And it also gives you like a little bit of an extra bonus and hopefully helps you right yourself before you start getting overwhelmed by more and more creatures coming out.
Were there any memorable aha moments in the process when something just really clicked?
Yeah, originally we didn't have the curses as a separate deck. Instead, it was shuffled into the creature deck. And whenever you flipped off the top, if it was a curse, you played that and you kept flipping, and you could keep hitting curses after curses after curses until you hit a creature. And that made the difficulty of the game a little uneven. You would have these turns where not much happened, and then you'd have a turn where like too much happened. So to address that, what we did is we just separated those decks out, and that way every turn you're going to play one curse and one creature. You weren't having these huge spikes, and instead the difficulty stayed about the same every turn. But the context of the board can really change how impactful some of these things are.
What's your favorite card in the Darklands expansion set?
Well, yeah, there's a lot here that I really enjoy. Obviously, we have different overlords that are really exciting, a lot of curses that are a ton of fun. But I think the heart of the game really comes down to the creatures that you're summoning. And I think my favorite one here is the Frilled Taskmaster. What Frilled Taskmaster does is when he enters the road, he's going to move all of the other units down. And what I love so much about this simple design is that it really embraces what we created here, which is this little tower defense mini game that you're trying to build out. But it really does something unexpected when you're not ready for it, and it can really ruin your plans. And I love that something so simple can celebrate what the game is doing so well.
So what was the most difficult card to design, or what's the card that's changed a lot during design?
One of the hardest cards to get right was Mr. Squeaks. I love this card because he's such a nuisance. He doesn't deal a lot of damage, but you can't kill him. The only options that you have is to keep dealing damage to yourself to move him somewhere a little innocuous, or you can try to move him to the moat and just get him off the board as quickly as you can. He was a very difficult one to get the numbers quite right because he operates on a completely different vector than any of the other cards.
Which DarkLands Overlord is your favorite, and why?
Well, this isn't going to be a very tough one, but the Cryptozoic, I mean, it's a T-Rex driving a monster truck, so that's already amazing. But just like how my favorite card in the game is the Frilled Taskmaster, Cryptozoic and his faction of creatures, it really focuses on the movement aspect of the DarkLands creatures. So I think he's just so good. His signature move allows you to advance one of the creatures that are already on the board. So it's a very, unlike some of the other ones that are just dealing more damage to you and your units, he is powerful in a subversive way that can really threaten you from taking a lot of damage.
Were there any constraints on the flavor of the DarkLands?
No, we actually were given like pretty free reign to kind of come up with whatever crazy zany ideas that we can come up with. We knew that we wanted them to have a visually distinct look, so I came up with this look of kind of, I remember when I was a kid and I would do a bunch of different crayon colors on a piece of paper, and then you cover it with black and then you use a key to kind of scratch off so you get to see the colors show through underneath. And I thought that was like a really cool aesthetic that I hadn't really seen. We really wanted you to be able to look at a card and instantly know, oh, that's a DarkLands creature. And so by doing it on the color side of things instead of some other identifiable aspect, it meant we can come up with whatever designs we wanted for the creatures, like rat pirates or a giant T-Rex driving a monster truck. So I'm really excited to see all these things come to life. It's been really cool to see some of the crazier ideas come out.
How hard is the game mode really? Did you lose or win a lot when you were designing it?
Well, we lost a lot and we won a lot. You know, trying to find the right balance point in this process is one of the big challenges when you're creating a brand new style of game. We typically stuck to the decks that come pre-made for players because we know a lot of players are just going to want to pick 2 decks, throw them down on the table, grab DarkLands, and just start playing. But we also know people have their own decks that they've built and they might want to bring that to the table here. And so that necessitated us to have different difficulty modes. I can say if you play on the hardest difficulty, you're going to have a pretty tough time. But we wanted to make it accessible to everybody. So I think that you'll find a spot where you think the difficulty lies the best in the game.
Was there anything that you left on the cutting room floor that was maybe just too punishing, too difficult?
Yeah, we had a few cards that might have been a little over the line and unfun, so we decided we didn't want to print all those. But we also had some ideas for some other factions. And if you guys love this mode as much as I do, then, you know, we'll be ready to give you more of it in the future.
All right, last question. What's one good tip for players playing their first game of DarkLands?
Take your time. There's going to be a lot going on, especially in your first game. So make sure to go through each of the steps slowly, evaluate the board, and make sure you're not missing anything. That's the first tip. Second tip is try to manage the creatures in play before you try to deal a lot of damage to the boss. One of the most important things is to protect your life totals and protect your kingdom. And if you're able to do that, eventually you'll be able to take down the boss. Don't try to rush him down. They have 99 health. It's going to take you a while.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for backing.